This is the story involving the Southern Baptist Convention, because a lot of people involved with the Southern Baptist Convention are so mad right now at leaders in the Southern Baptist Convention. And it's kind of wild why they are mad at them. And I'm going to show you this right here. Check out this headline. This is from 2018. And basically, it's saying this police officer from somewhere was sentenced to 15 years in a sex abuse case. Horrible story. And the thing about this story, let me tell you about that because this is relevant. That police officer, his name was Sean Jackman, and he adopted a baby girl at the age of 2 years old. Her name, and it is public, I don't think I'm not allowed to say this, her name is Samantha Killeri. She was adopted at the age of 2, and Sean Jackman allegedly sexually abused her until she was the age of 18. It just happened throughout her childhood, over and over. It's awful stuff. The only reason he was caught is because later on in her life, she recorded him admitting to what he did, and that allowed her to have him arrested, and he was eventually charged with crimes. And that article I just showed you was that in 2018, he was sentenced to 15 years behind bars. Like, good. I'm glad he's behind bars. Holy crap, what that woman must have gone through. Horrible stuff. But Killeri, the woman in this story, she didn't say Jackman was the only guy who deserved to be punished. She said that he had a girlfriend at one point who worked in the police station with him. She knew that he was abusing her. She said Jackman's father knew what he was doing to her. And she said the police department, this is in Louisville, Kentucky, the police department also knew that all of these people knew he was abusing her. So she wanted to sue all of them as well for being complicit in this abuse. Now, she did file that lawsuit a few years ago, but a judge tossed out those cases against those other defendants. Why? Because the judge said the statute of limitations to bring this case has expired. You had 5 years after the abuse stops to bring forth these types of lawsuits. That was a long time ago. I think 2014 would have been the last time she could have brought these cases forward. The judge said, sorry, it's too late. The law doesn't allow for it. So over the past several years, we've talked about the Catholic Church sex abuse scandals and how a lot of state attorneys general have responded by pushing for laws that open up a window for those statute of limitations cases. Maybe they say, hey, if you were a victim of childhood sexual abuse and you want to file a lawsuit against the perpetrators or the institutions that harbored them, we're going to open up a window of like 2 years when anyone can file those lawsuits. Or maybe they extend the statute of limitations from like 5 years to 20 years, whatever it is. Well, in Kentucky, that is basically what they have done in the past few years. They have given victims more time to file those types of lawsuits. Like, they now have 10 years to file claims, not 5. And as of 2021, the law says you can file a lawsuit against organizations that harbor abusers, whether they're governmental or religious, which is interesting because that's exactly what Samantha Killeri was trying to do, right? So now here's the question. Well, she was trying to do that. The case was dismissed. Can she bring forth that lawsuit now? Well, guess what? Yesterday, the Kentucky Supreme Court actually heard that case. Basically, they have to figure out if alleged abuse occurred before those laws changed and someone was blocked out by the statute of limitations from filing a lawsuit. Well, can they file those lawsuits now? Are those institutions, could they be in trouble? And we'll see what happens. I mean, you have victims' rights groups who say you have to give survivors more time to sue. It's important for the sake of justice. A lot of victims don't realize what happened to them until it's too late to file the lawsuit. And even people who are aware of what's happening to them may feel hesitant to go after their alleged assailants in court. So allowing older cases of abuse to be tried in court, like now, that is so important to fix the mistakes of the past. On the other side, you have conservative Christians who say, like, no, we don't want to open that. We don't want to open that. What's the phrase I'm looking for? I don't know. We don't want to do it. And there is some defense for that position, because if a victim of abuse that happened decades and decades ago, if they want to sue someone for what happened then, it's possible the defendant's memory isn't as clear. It's possible that exculpatory evidence isn't as available now as it might have been in the past. But critics would just say, guess what? The passage of time doesn't whitewash the crimes that may have occurred. Plus, standards of evidence still apply, like the burden of proof still exists. If someone is convicted of sexual abuse, who cares when it happened? Let the survivors have their day in court, and let's see what happens. But if you follow these stories when it comes to the Catholic Church, you know the Catholic Church has fought all of these types of opening the windows, extending the statute of limitations. They've always tried to fight that because they know if victims are allowed to sue their perpetrators and the institutions that harbor them, the Catholic Church is screwed. And they have been. They filed bankruptcy all over the country, a lot of dioceses. Now, you would think that Southern Baptists, who have over the past couple of years gone through their own public reckoning dealing with sexual abuse in their own world, you would think they want to avoid siding with abusers and that they would be supportive of the victims. But this is what's amazing. When reporters started digging into this particular case that was in front of the Kentucky Supreme Court this week, they found, I'm going to show you this. This is the document that came up. Check this out. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. Commonwealth of Kentucky Supreme Court. This is the case involving Jackman, the father, I believe, these other people, Samantha Killary. And this is what's called an amicus brief. This is saying we have nothing to do with this case, but we have very strong feelings about the outcome because it may affect us. So we want to tell the court, all the justices, how they ought to rule. And look at who wrote this amicus brief. The Southern Baptist Convention, Executive Committee of the Southern Baptist Convention, Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, and Lifeway Christian Resources. That's also Southern Baptist affiliated, in support of the abusers. They filed a brief telling the court, hey, you cannot allow any of these lawsuits to proceed because if you do, holy shit, the Southern Baptist Convention will be in so much trouble. And they literally say that, like, in this argument, in this case, they actually say that the SBC, where did it go? I'm going to show you this part in the lawsuit. Here we go. I don't know how to say this word, amici, whatever. We have a strong interest in the statute of limitations issue presented in this appeal. We, Southern Baptists, are all named defendants in another lawsuit involving a Kentucky court that involves allegations of childhood sexual abuse dating back to 2003. We are not accused of doing the stuff you're talking about, but we are the institution, like this third party, who were, I'm going to just summarize. They're saying if you allow this to happen, we're screwed. That's why they filed this lawsuit. And it's like no one, they apparently filed this back in April. No one knew about it until like 2 days ago or something, 3 days ago. And Southern Baptists, who have been working to reform the SBC and make it better for victims to report bad behavior and for the institution to change, they are so mad about this. Here's one statement that was released, and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here. This is a statement released by a Caring Well training team. These are like professionals who have a vested interest in reforming the SBC when it comes to sexual abuse, and advisors and members of the Task Force and Past Abuse Reform Implementation Task Force. These are Southern Baptist leaders who were put in charge of helping the SBC deal with all the sexual abuse cases they were struggling with. And these people have now written a letter. It's not a letter to the court, it's just a public statement. And what are they saying in this thing? They are saying this brief, here we go. Can you see that? I know it's tiny font, but at the top here, this brief and the policy arguments made in it were made without our knowledge and without our approval. Moreover, they do not represent our values and positions. It has long been recognized that access to the justice system is a fundamental part of identifying and stopping abusers, as well as creating lasting, effective reform to protect the next generation. By taking this stand against access to the justice system, check this out. The leaders who approved this position have joined with the Catholic Church, powerful insurance companies, Michigan State University, and many others who have sought to close the halls of our courts to survivors of abuse. And it was a choice to stand against every survivor in Kentucky. And holy crap, that is a strong statement. You know it's bad for the Catholic Church when the Southern Baptist Convention people are saying, you guys are acting like Catholics here. And by the way, they pointed out, like, we know the concerns that if you open up older cases, there may be valid factual questions about what happened. But by opposing this case in front of the court and by siding with the abusers, it is a deliberate effort, they said, to ensure those questions are never asked. There was also one more statement I want to show you. This one comes from 3 women who have been open about the fact, here we go, that they were victims of sexual abuse. And the one thing they said, this is Megan Lively, Jules Woodson, and Tiffany Thigpen. They've been, for years now, courageous and outspoken about the need to reform the SBC. The thing they said, if I can find it here, I lied. I can't find it in here, but it is in here somewhere. I'll just point to that here. They said the SBC, Southern Baptist Convention, proactively chose to side against a survivor and with an abuser and the institution that enabled his abuse. These are the same arguments made repeatedly by organizations rife with the cover-up of sexual abuse, including the Catholic Church. And you could see here, as survivors, what are we asking for? And the first one is just for other people to stand with us to denounce that decision to file the amicus brief. They also want SBC churches, member bodies, to denounce what they did, to denounce the costs and the pain being shown against survivors. And also they're saying, we want to see how much you're spending to do this legal argument here. Who wrote the brief? Some lawyer had to do it. How much did you pay that person? How much money have you spent fighting in support of abusers versus how much money you are spending to help victims, supposedly? Which is a fair question. If the SBC actually cares about victims, are they putting more money into fighting this law or helping the people who suffered under their watch? And that's a fair question. I don't know how this case is going to get decided. It just got heard, but it raises so many questions about who thought this was a good idea to ask the Kentucky Supreme Court, hey, we have a vested interest in this case, so please side with the abusers. Who thought that was a good idea? Who in Southern Baptist Convention leadership thought this amicus brief, which they absolutely did not have to file, was worth their time and energy? And if the end result is that victims could get justice against their assailants and the institutions that gave those assailants cover, why does the SBC feel the need to get in the way rather than, maybe face some consequences, which would be well-deserved, for their role in all of this? I mean, I know why they don't want that to happen, but if they say we need to face consequences here, we are trying to reform ourselves, then guess what? That means taking punishment, taking the heat for what you all did. I mean, and I kind of wonder, what are Southern Baptists who are just church-going people, what are they going to do about all this? Are they just going to look the other way? Are they going to ignore all this? Or are they going to admit, you know what, maybe this institution is not worth our time and our money, And maybe I still believe in God, but I don't have to be a part of this church, because that's what would actually cause them to change some of their ways. So it's a fascinating story. I'm very curious to see how this all plays out.